Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Yes? Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Javier Dejanon, and I am one of the attorneys for one of the many 61 RICO defendants who had a status hearing today. I have the privilege of representing Jamie Marsicano, who passed the North Carolina bar exam, but is not allowed to be an attorney because of these pending charges. That situation is reflective of 61 people. 61 people's lives are on hold because of a 109-page indictment that seemingly has more discovery, more investigations, and more evidence. Today, when we entered this courthouse, we were informed that the public would not be allowed in the main courtroom for the first time. We were also informed that the defendants had to turn over their cell phones, put them in bags, and have their identity documents seized until the court hearing ended. This was entered through a written order, which we also had no time to argue against or listen to. There were people in the overflow courtroom, and there were cameras inside recording. And what happened next was caught on live cameras, thankfully, but I wanted to provide a quick summary. First of all, we don't know what's going to happen next. We heard today that the first group that will be heard on trial is the one that Judge Adams set. For those who haven't kept up with the case, Judge Adams was handling this case for about a year, 2 years. Judge Adams was reassigned to family court, so now we have a new judge, Judge Farmer. What Judge Farmer said is that he is inclined to have that first group that Judge Adams said be heard first. But if you have been following this case, you'll also remember that Ayla King, one of the defendants, filed for speedy trial. The motion to dismiss was denied. It went to the Georgia Court of Appeals, and recently the Georgia Supreme Court denied a petition to review that decision. So we have another trial that needs to happen quick because there is a speedy trial demand, the one of Ayla King. Judge Farmer indicated that that trial should start by end of August because that is a deadline they have. But this leaves a question of how the first trial group will go before that. We also heard that there is a deadline of May 30th for all defendants to file a list of all their motions and file additional motions that have been adopted before. So in other words, from today till May 30th, the 61 defendants now have to file more motions that were already adopted. Then we heard about this, a thumb drive. Today, for the first time ever, the state revealed that there's more evidence in this case, 57 gigabytes of evidence actually. And if you have been following this case, Judge Adams had given multiple deadlines for the state to hand over evidence. December 31st, May 17th, and a site visit by the end of June 2024. Today, Judge Farmer said that because those were not put in writing by Judge Adams, he is going to now set a new deadline for the state to hand over all evidence. I cannot emphasize how chaotic this will be. We not only have terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of evidence already late disclosed, but now we have more evidence to review with a May 30th deadline and trial orders that are still unclear for everyone in the public and in the defense. It's no secret with all that this case is extremely complex. 61 co-defendants, multiple allegations across multiple years. This is the largest RICO that this county has faced, and we as defense attorneys feel that because every hearing we get more deadlines that aren't respected. We get more evidence that gets disclosed, and we don't get any motions ruled on. There are over 250 motions pending for almost 2 years now, and they still haven't been ruled on. But I also want to talk about what's uplifting about this case. It is no mystery that this is a political case. If you read the first page of the indictment, you will read that this is a political case. In fact, the Attorney General's office, as part of the executive branch, brings political cases all the time. This is no mystery. It should not be controversial. But what should be of concern is how this case has been managed. Judge Farmer is actually the third judge on this case because the first judge recused themselves. It's been almost 2 years since indictment. Some of the underlying accusations are almost 3 years old, and we're still here with these dates that might be changed, with more discovery getting released, and our clients' lives still in limbo. What is uplifting to me, though, is that because this is a political case, there has been a political response. The community is showing up to support the 61 co-defendants because the community knows what these charges are really about. Cop City.
That's right.
Today, I was so happy to see that community members prepared over 250 burritos, over 250 parfait yogurts for the community, for the defendants, for the attorneys. And that is how this case will continue, with that support that all the co-defendants need. I believe that some defendants have words to say, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's spelled first name Xavier, last name Dejanon, DE space JANON.
Drop the fucking charges! Drop the fucking charges! Drop the fucking charges! Drop the fucking charges!
My name is Marlon Kautz. I am a spokesperson for the Atlanta Solidarity Fund, which is an anti-repression organization which defends the rights of protesters by ensuring access to bail assistance and legal counsel. I want to be clear that I am also a defendant in this case. I'm one of the ATL 61, and what's happening with this prosecution is not a pursuit of justice. It is not upholding public safety. It is a calculated political attack intended to prevent the public from protesting. It's designed to ensure that nobody ever again challenges the agenda of the Atlanta Police Foundation, the mayor, and Governor Brian Kemp. Consensus is emerging among legal experts that this Cop City RICO case is going nowhere. Just last week, experts were quoted in an Associated Press article saying that legally speaking, this case is dead in the water. But the problem is it will not die. And there's a reason for that, a political reason. As long as 61 people are facing decades in prison on RICO charges simply for being associated with a political movement, protest everywhere is chilled and intimidated. And especially in a political climate where anger is growing every day against abuses of power at the highest levels of our government, of course, right-wing authorities are going to use every tool they have to intimidate people out of being in the streets. I am here today to say that this repression will not work. The Atlanta Solidarity Fund remains committed to defending the rights of all protesters. Even through all of these legal attacks, we have continued our work, and we will not stop. Even if they break down our doors and assault us like they did 2 years ago, we will not stop. Even if they threaten us with decades in prison and an unending legal battle, we will not stop. Even if they murder us like they did Tortuguita, we will not stop. See, authoritarians use legal attacks like this to create fear, to paralyze us. But they also use these attacks to alienate us, to disconnect us from each other. When we see headlines about people being investigated, being jailed, being deported for their political organizing, it's tempting to think of this as someone else's problem. Political prosecutions are everyone's problem. If we allow cases like this to continue, very soon these same legal attacks will be used against everyone. What's next? A RICO prosecution against pro-choice activists? A conspiracy indictment against immigrant justice organizers? These are real threats. These are real strategies being considered by the authorities now. This case and every case like it must end now. Not in 2028, not next year, now, before it's too late. Thank you.
You can't stop the power of the people. 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 You can't stop the power of the people.
Hi, I'm Sonali Gupta. I'm another defendant in this RICO trial. And I just wanted to outline some of the many malfeasances of the Atlanta municipal court system and the Georgia State Legislature. Let's start with how the Georgia State Legislature, after the prosecution brought this bogus indictment, they have attempted to ban bail funds in the state of Georgia. That makes it clear that this is a political prosecution. Let's talk about how the Atlanta City Council ignored many days of unanimous public consensus against Cop City. They do not stand in the interest of the people. Let's talk about how the Inspector General investigating many public officials in Atlanta was forced to resign after intimidation and threats by public city officials for investigating corruption in the city. And then let's talk about how Andre Dickens, as a black mayor in a Democratic city, is betraying every possible demographic he claims to represent. Shame! So, I don't understand why I'm a scientist. I would rather not think about politics. I would rather just be able to live a normal life. I'm a hardworking citizen, and they have turned me into the criminal. They have turned my 60 co-defendants into criminals. They have turned John Mazurek into a criminal. And they're forcing people to become criminals. They're forcing Rodney Hinton, whose son was murdered by the police, to become criminals. They're forcing Luigi to become a criminal. They're criminalizing people like Mahmoud Khalil. We are all part of one struggle. And they can turn us into criminals all they want. They can attempt it all they want. But I think we all know what the real criminal enterprise in this state is. It is the state. It is the Georgia State Legislature. It is City Council. It is Mayor Andre Dickens. That's all. Thanks.
Revolution! Revolution! Revolution!
Is there any questions?
So obviously the backdrop of this case is a new president, not new, but a returning presidential administration that is cracking down on social justice activism. Obviously this is not on paper a First Amendment case, but I wonder if you could speak more broadly about the First Amendment implications. Marlon was just talking about how if they could do this to demonstrators who are protesting the training facility, they could do this to anyone. Talk about how this affects activism moving forward.
To be clear, this indictment came down during the Biden administration. So it is a fiction that this government has just started repressing speech. That's a fiction. This government has been repressing speech for centuries that it disagrees with. In terms of that question on this indictment not being a First Amendment issue, it is. The indictment talks about ideology. It talks about values. It talks about beliefs. When you read the indictment on its face, and there are a lot of demurs, motions to dismiss on this, it is about speech. So it is a First Amendment attack, the indictment itself. I can't comment on beyond this case, but other people before me have said how under this administration, standing up for a free Palestine gets you deported. Similarly, standing up against Cop City almost got one of the defendants deported. So it's the same lineage, it's just a new face.
confident do you feel now that George?
There was a question over there.
I was going to ask you, can you talk about the complex nature of this case? Obviously, 61 defendants. You have to keep your client's interests foremost. Can you talk about how you're able to do that?
Yes, so on this question of how to represent my client's interests in relation to 61 defendants, I can't comment on that right now, but what I will say is that collective defense efforts are powerful against political cases. Collective defense efforts have worked before. J20 is a big example of that, but there are dozens of collective defense efforts that have worked historically.
It sounded like there was rumblings of 33 of the defendants signing on to some kind of letter. Can you speak to that at all?
Yes, so co-counsel Mike Schwartz submitted a letter to the court today, which we co-signed as well. And what that letter suggested to the court was that to move more efficiently, why not schedule all the demurrers first, all the motions to dismiss, so that we can get rid of cases that won't stick to court, and then we can move on to other issues. That's what that letter was about.
You think now that Judge Farmer is taking over the case, there were some issues with Judge Adams, you mentioned, not having written orders and all that. Do you think Judge Farmer can get this case moving?
I think in terms of whether Judge Adams can move this case forward, today we witness how very, very difficult that is. Judge Farmer tried and is trying his best to organize this case, move it forward, schedule it, but every time a defendant was called, another problem arose. And so moving the case forward for any judge, any court, will be very, very difficult. At one point, the judge reminded the state that they're the ones who brought this charge. They're the ones who created this problem. And so the state should be the one that's asked these questions, not the defense or even the judge, but rather, why is the state pursuing this and insisting on doing it?
Could you expand a little bit on the source of the delays? Like, I'm sure to some extent, the nature of something this large and complex is owed some blame. But also today we learned that there's 57 gigabytes of discovery long after discovery was supposed to be turned in. Why are we has this not been resolved 2 years after it was filed?
In terms of the question of discovery dumps, as I mentioned before, the state has missed every deadline that the court has imposed. And so it is a question for the court as to why these deadlines aren't respected.
Do you have any strategy for addressing those 57 gigabytes of new discovery? Like, is that going to be admissible in your...
I can't give comment on legal strategy.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank y'all.
Come back. Stop Cop City!
Stop Cop City!
Stop Cop City! Stop Cop City! Stop Cop City!
Atlanta, united! We'll never be defeated!
Thank you for watching ANF Plus. For more breaking news, live coverage, and your community stories, download the Atlanta News First app. You can also watch us on YouTube, Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. To join the conversation on YouTube Live, visit our channel and hit subscribe. You can also listen to the Atlanta News First podcast by searching Atlanta News First on your preferred listening platform.